Section 15 of Library Essays, Papers Related to the Work of Public Libraries. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by G.B. Perez. Library Essays, Papers Related to the Work of Public Libraries by Arthur Elmore Bostwick. System in the Library, Part 1. It has been said by Mr. W. H. Mallock that what we call labor organizations are misnamed because their object is, in most cases, the organization not of labor, but of idleness. This somewhat cryptic statement may be understood to mean that trade unions have endeavored usually not to improve the methods and results of labor, nor to make its output larger or more satisfactory, but rather to improve the condition of the laboring man, to make his life more comfortable and his task easier, to shorten hours and lessen output, and often, as a result, to make that output of lower grade. This will be regarded as a base slander by many people, and it is doubtless exaggerated. Yet there is an amount of truth in it that cannot be overlooked by any worker or any combination of workers, which is the same as saying that it interests almost all of us in this country, for the only Americans able to work who do not work are tramps and a very few millionaires. We shall try to consider its bearing on library workers, but before doing so, it will be well to look at it a little longer in its more general aspect. Those who desire to improve the workers' condition will justify themselves very properly on economic grounds, by saying that to do this is also to improve the methods of work and the quality of the product. No one can do good work who is ill-housed, underfed, improperly clothed, or overworked. This is true, but it is also not true that if we make it our primary aim to see that the worker is as comfortable as possible, to lift from him all the difficulties and burdens of his task, we shall also improve his output proportionally. Rather, should we do away with that output altogether, we should simply be organizing idleness. We may consider as an analogy the difference between a tariff for revenue and one for protection. The total abolition of import duties is impossible, we are told. They are necessary for revenue. Even England, the world's greatest free trade country, has import duties. Very true, but the amount of the duty and the objects on which it is laid will differ absolutely according to its purpose. Again, we will suppose that the same company owns an elevated railway and a surface trolley line. They will naturally, if left to themselves, adjust fares, speed, and stops in the former as to induce a larger proportion of people to travel by the slower surface line, which is less expensive to operate. If the surface line were owned by a rival company, there would be an entirely different schedule of fares, speeds, and stops on the elevated road, intended to crowd it with passengers and to derive the largest possible revenue from it alone. In like manner, we must doubtless look out for the worker, and he must doubtless look out for himself. His conditions of life and work must be made such that he will perform his task as well as possible. But those conditions will be adjusted quite differently if we regard the comfort of the worker as the prime object from what they will be if we regard the excellence of the output as the prime object, and the worker's comfort as a means to that end. This will bear statement in still another way. We are put into this world to do our appointed tasks, and it is our business to do them as well as we possibly can. This means that we must take the proper amount of rest, eat good food, keep happy and contented, and all the rest of it. But he who regards his work simply as a means of furnishing him the wherewithal to be happy, to take expensive vacations, live in a fine house, and so on, will neither do his best work, nor will he enjoy the good things of life as he ought. Our friends the socialists, whose propaganda is receiving more attention from thoughtful men today than it did a few years ago, both because of the truths that it presents and the menace that it offers to our present civilization, are making the mistake of dwelling upon the importance of the workers' comfort rather than that of the workers' improvement. They promise us that they shall all be in comfortable circumstances and will have to work only 3 hours a day. Incidentally, the output is to be better. But by putting the matter thus, instead of the other way about, they have appealed to the element of laziness that exists in all men. They have held out the prospect of idleness instead of labor. I have not lived west of the Mississippi long enough to know whether the same conditions obtain here as in the East, but there, comparing things today with what I remember of my boyhood, I seem to see an increasing tendency among all workers to put self first and work second. As they call it in Scotland, of go easy, doing as little as one can and still keep his job, is creeping in and has secured a firm foothold. It is increasingly difficult to get any kind of work, manual or mental, done really well, so well that one feels like saying, "Well done, thou faithful servant." And yet, the shirkers are all anxious to get to the top, and they wonder why they do not. They comfort themselves by saying that success nowadays is solely a matter of pull. But it is not so. Look around you and you will see, for the most part, men in charge of large enterprises who are efficient and who have put work before self. Men who are engrossed in what they are doing, who love it and therefore do it effectively. There never was a baser slander than the common assertion that we Americans love money. If we loved the dollar for itself alone, we should never sling it about as we do. We love the excitement and the fun of making money. Look at our working millionaires. They want no more money. They cannot use what they have. They enjoy the task of owning and running a great railway system, of organizing and managing some great industrial combination. We may find it necessary to clip their wings a little, but we cannot call them lazy and inefficient. They make the job too hard for us. There is no go-easy policy here, and those who favor it will never get to the top. Let us hope that this pernicious idea that self is worth more than work will never find a foothold in the library. We see it here and there, but I believe that, taken by and large, library workers love their tasks, and that they are efficient in proportion to that love. As our libraries are growing larger, our organizations more complex, it is, I know, growing harder to take a live personal interest in the work. So much of it is specialized routine. One feels like a mere cogwheel in a great machine. The assistant who pastes labels or addresses postal cards in a big library finds it harder to realize that she is doing something interesting and useful than the librarian of a small library, who not only performs these tasks but all the others, meets her public, selects and buys her books, plans in one way and another for the extension and betterment of her work. Yet the rapid, accurate, and efficient performance of the lesser task is as important as that of the greater. A label pasted awry may ruin the library's reputation in the eye of the casual user. A missent card may cause trouble to dozens of one's fellow assistants. Routine work is dull only when one does not understand its purpose. Dullness is in the worker, not in the work. Are libraries indeed introducing too much organization into the work? Is it becoming too machine-like? Now, it should not be forgotten that there is a machine something akin to personality. Individuality, at any rate, is not too strong a word. Every locomotive has tricks and characteristics that its engineer knows and sometimes loves. He pats its back affectionately and speaks of it as she. The idea that to be part of a machine excludes personality and individual work is all wrong. One cannot go careering about eccentrically and unsystematically. The very purpose of organization is to stop all that, but within the limits of motion and action assigned to a person as his part in the larger motion and action of the machine. There is still room for moving well or ill, for helping on the greater work or antagonizing it and throwing it out of order. If a cogwheel thinks that it is manifesting its originality in some meritorious way by making the whole machine creak and wobble and turn out an inferior product, that cogwheel has power to do just this, but it should not complain if the machinist throws it into the scrap heap. Now, in the library, the parts of our machine are workers of all kinds. Their connection and relationship are conditioned and limited by customs, rules, and orders. To test the desirability of these or of any change in them, there is just one question to be asked. First, last, and all the time, namely, is this for ourselves or for our work? Is it merely to make things easier for the assistants, or will it improve the work and benefit the public? The asking of this question and its thoughtful consideration will puncture many a bubble. We will take, if you please, the question of vacations. Anyone who has tried to make out a vacation schedule in a large library knows that, next to making out a recitation schedule in a large school or college, it is the most vexatious task of the kind that is given to man to do. Everyone must have a vacation, and everyone wants to have it at some time when the efficiency of the library will be impaired by it. Everyone wants to go away at once, and there are times when no one wants to be absent. Any possible arrangement means dissatisfaction. Heartburnings, a feeling that favoritism or prejudice has been at work. Into the mind of most librarians has, I am sure, crept the suggestion, what is the use of all this? Why not close the library for a month? Is that not done by the schools, and are we not too an educational institution? The fact that librarians do not yield, in this case, to the suggestion of a change that would benefit them and all their assistants, is of course due to the obviousness of the other fact that it would be bad for the public. This test of the public advantage may be applied to the whole question of system in the library, of how much system is good, and what kind and how it shall be determined and applied. When a man comes in contact with a library rule that incommodes him personally, he is apt to deride it impatiently as red tape. When he finds absence of a rule where he would have benefited by it, he concludes that the library is in chaos or confusion. Now there should evidently be neither one nor the other of these, although we cannot allow the personal convenience of a single user to be the test. Our system should not exist for itself alone, nor should we try to get along without system altogether. There should be just so much and of just such a kind as will result in the maximum degree of service rendered to the public. The individual user is quite wrong, of course, in condemning a regulation that annoys him personally for this reason alone. But if we should find that it annoyed all other users as well without other advantage than the saving of some trouble to the library assistant, he would, I conceive, be quite right in calling it red tape. This term is applied primarily to annoying official restrictions that have no use whatever. But we may well extend it to restrictions that benefit the administrator without improving the administration. Rules, customs, and manners of procedure in a library, whether they say thou shalt or thou shalt not, are of two kinds. Those addressed to the library staff and those addressed to the public. Both, however, are intended to enable the public to get more good out of the library. The members of the staff are told to do certain things and not to do others, because this will make it easier for the users of the library to get what they want. The latter, in turn, are bidden to do this and forbidden to do that. Not, as some of them seem to think, to make the librarian's work easier or to save him trouble, but to throw the library open wider to their fellows. System of this kind may bear very hard on the individual user. He may chafe, for instance, at any restriction in the number of books he is allowed to borrow. But if no such restriction existed, the privileges of his fellow borrowers would be curtailed thereby. He may grumble because of the time limit of his book has expired before he has finished reading it, unmindful of the fact that some of his fellow readers are anxiously waiting for it. But if the book in his possession is not wanted by anybody, if there are other such unused books in the library that he wants, should he not have and keep them? Assuredly. Every library should make arrangements whereby none of its books should be kept from use to stand idly on the shelves. Our test of public usefulness declares as decisively for this as it does for the partition of privilege, in the case of more than one anxious borrower. To return to that part of the library machine that affects the library staff, I have many times heard assistants complain of incidents of organization and systemization that seem to them too much like those vogue in commercial institutions. Now, it may be freely admitted that there is a difference between the library and the store or the factory, or more generally between any institution for the public good and one for private gain. In the former, the public advantage is the prime object, and to attain it, we must often consult the comfort or convenience of the administrators. In the latter, the advantage of the administrators is the prime object, and to gain it, they are generally forced to consult the comfort and convenience of the public. The primary and secondary elements are reversed, but they exist in each. Both the department store and the library must look out for the public. It is the library's business to do so, and it is in the store's business advantage to do the same. It is hard to see, therefore, why any kind of system that will make a store work better is not worth looking into by a librarian. The systemization in the staff of an up-to-date modern business organization and in its work is a continual surprise to him who has not looked into such things for a score of years. The stores and the factories are ahead of librarians in this respect, and we may as well admit it. After all, this is natural. What is to one's business advantage is always done better than what is merely one's business. But there is no reason why we should not study these better methods and imitate those that are worth copying. End of section 15.